Hey there, guys! Sejam todos muito bem-vindos, sejam muito bem-vindas. Esse é mais um episódio do nosso podcast, PodTia. E hoje nós vamos fazer novamente um episódio 100% in English, 100% em inglês. Vocês gostaram muito, curtiram o papo, gostei muito dos comentários, gostei muito das mensagens que vocês me mandaram lá no Instagram falando sobre esse episódio, então trouxe um outro assunto para a gente desenvolver aqui em inglês, tá? Então a gente vai falar de como a sua linguística pode afetar o seu aprendizado, o seu processo de aprendizagem, e nós vamos discutir aqui um pouquinho do que eu falei na minha palestra recente. Eu estava dando uma palestra sobre autoestima e autoconfiança, então a gente vai falar um pouquinho sobre isso e também sobre como as coisas que você diz sobre você mesmo vão influenciar diretamente no seu aprendizado. Dando alguns exemplos. Já vai, se inscreve, já deixa seu joinha, já faz tudo que você precisa fazer e sit tight, presta atenção. Se você está no carro, vai ser uma delícia ser sua companhia nessa viagem. Se você está caminhando, vai ser ótimo caminhar com você. E se você está aí só practicing your English, sentadinho aí no seu sofá, também vai estar uma delícia estar com você aí. Então sente-se confortavelmente e enjoy the ride. Well, guys, welcome back. This is another episode of PodTia. I'm very, very excited to be here talking about a subject that I really love, which is linguistics and how it affects the way we learn, the way we think, the way we live, actually. So I decided to record this episode because this week I have been talking to some of my mentees. I have some people who have mentoring sessions, individual or private, in sessions with me. And in one of the sessions, I had a student who said something that really was kind of shocking, but still something that is very current. But she said, you know what, teacher, what I feel when I speak in English is that I feel ridiculous. I feel like I'm a very little kid and who doesn't know how to communicate or who doesn't know very much about the world. And the world will never know how, smart or articulate I can be when I'm speaking English. And, well, first of all, whatever you say, and this is something you have to know about your linguistics, is whatever you say, being it something you say to yourself or something you say to someone else, something you say out loud especially, it's something that is going to program in your mind. Of course, a lot of the things we say out loud, sometimes we don't pay attention a lot to linguistics and how we communicate. Some of the things we say reveal the way we feel or the way people made us feel at some point of our lives. And because of that, we started believing certain things, So probably, and this is very current also to me, is that we're going to figure out and find out that this is due to a memory that you had, probably something that happened to you in your childhood, especially first childhood, when we talk about the first 7 years of your life, when you're more unconscious than conscious, you navigate through unconscious mind most of the times, and you don't have psychological tools to deal with that. And because of not having the psychological tools, you end up believing a lot of the things people say to you. So it happened to me when I was in my first childhood that people made fun of me, or my mother used to say that I was stupid because I was very bad at mathematics, and my brother sometimes made fun of me and I felt humiliated, and this created a lot of beliefs that I had about myself, and I repeated for so many years that I was stupid or maybe incapable of learning. And I know that some people say that about learning English. So the very first thing and most important, even if you don't believe it you or not, there's a bunch of scientific studies that prove what I'm saying, that whatever you say is going to limit the way you learn. What happens is that when you're learning and you tell your brain that you're incapable of learning or that you're dumb and you're not going to be able to do it, your brain is going to activate a primary law that you have programmed in your brain, which is the minor effort law. The minor effort law is a law that tells your brain that you have to save energy because energy is not easily attainable. What do I mean by that? Your brain has evolved together with a lot of things that has happened around the world. But there's also this other thing that's very important that you know. Your brain does not know that you have a supermarket somewhere around you. Your brain does not know that you have food available and you're not, you don't have to hunt or anything. And because of that law, this is why you keep some stock of energy here, right, on your belly, you know, because your brain is always telling you, let's save this energy so that maybe when you're sick or when there's no food, you have it to spend, you know. And because of that, your brain's so smart. It developed a system where when you tell yourself that you cannot do something, your brain will say, okay, so I'll save this energy so that I don't have to deal with that. So what happens is the next thing you're going to do is whenever you sit down to study or passively try to actively try to learn something, your brain's going to enter economy mode. So you're going to be distracted, or you're going to start procrastinating and, you know, oh, I'll do it later, or maybe next week, or maybe you won't be able to maintain a certain level of discipline because your brain is telling you, let's save this energy. You can't do it anyway. Why are you going to spend your energy like that? So it's important that you know that, and whenever you reinforce those sentences linguistically, you know, being it complaining with a friend or with me or with another student, with someone who's already fluent or not, you're reinforcing this to your brain. So you're telling your brain to, oh, so let's save this energy because we can't do it anyway. So the very first thing you have to do is you have to change your linguistics. What you say to yourself and what you say to others about yourself matters a lot. So you have to stop saying that you can't. You have to stop saying that you're stupid or you're incapable, or even that you feel ridiculous, or that you probably you don't see yourself fluent in the future. So talking about linguistics, the other way around just works also very well. So it's important that you know that when you say good things about yourself and you say, oh, I'm smart, I can do it. If I make the effort, if I have the discipline, if I do what I have to do, I'll be able to learn. And of course, you will be able to learn. Let me remind you that you learned a language, your first language, your mother language, from scratch. You had zero experience with learning languages. You didn't have any methodology. You didn't have any knowledge about the world. You didn't know how to articulate sounds. You didn't know the meaning of words or how to make sentences or anything like that. So it's not something that you had to have a system. You just had to have, you know, contact with the language. You just have to make efforts. And what's very important that you know is that you didn't learn Portuguese, your first language, by making it right, or pronouncing the sounds correctly at first, or making perfect correct sentences, or getting the verbal tenses right, or knowing the prepositions right. That's not what happened. First, you made a lot of mistakes, and then you were trying to sound some words that you couldn't sound them very well. You were trying to imitate sounds. One of these days, one of my friends, she has a little boy, and she's actually an English teacher like myself, and she came over with her little baby, and he's around 1 year old, so he's starting to mumble sounds. So mumbling is like when you're making sounds that don't sound really like language, but you're trying to do that because you're trying to imitate muscle and sounding. So what happens to him at this phase, he's 1 year and a month maybe now. So you look at him and you talk to him and he's trying to imitate the sound. So he looks at you and he looks at your face and you see that you say something like dada, and he will go da, 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 you know, and start making these sounds because he's experimenting. So the problem with adults learning English that they think they have to skip this phase where they speak things and they are not very precise, your English is not very correct, you don't know how to sound things properly because your pronunciation is not perfect, or because your verbal structure is not the best, you don't know exactly where present goes or past or whatever. And this is natural. If you're trying to speak English and you're making mistakes because you don't sound correctly, if you're trying to speak English but you're making mistakes because you're still not, you know, making it right when it comes to verbal tenses, you're in the right path. That means you're going to get there. But the thing is, you're not just going to be silent for a while and then suddenly out of the blue, wow, you start speaking perfect, correct English and very accurate sounds, very accurate sentences. That's not going to happen. So you have to understand that you will go through phases. Normally what happens when you're learning is you go through the first phase when you're learning, which is a very natural thing that's going to happen. First, you understand much more, and you go through a cycle, through a period, a stage of learning that is the silent period. The silent period is that period where your brain is trying to accumulate vocabulary, structure, new sounds, because you know that there are so many different sounds that we don't sound very properly when we're speaking for the first time. So your brain is trying to acquire all of this input at first. So it's very common that for the first steps of language learning, you can read text properly, but it's more difficult when you don't have the text and you're just listening to it. And then you start understanding a little bit more of what people are saying. And then you're silent for this period because you still don't know how to, you know, to make sentences or sound some sounds, and this is absolutely normal. Then you go to a second phase, the secondary phase, when you're going through intermediate English and you know how to correctly make sentences and structure, but you still make a lot of mistakes. You still don't know very properly how to, you know, insert the correct verbal tense, or you don't know exactly which preposition you're going to use in that sentence, and that's totally natural and totally okay. And you're still trying to sound more natural by gaining more rhythm, and this is going to happen for a long time, where you still have to think to construct sentences, where things are not necessarily automatic in your brain. And if you don't go through those stages, you're never going to get to that stage where things are coming automatically, or you don't have to think a lot about the structures when you're making sentences. This is never going to happen. So the very first thing that you have to know about speaking English is a social activity. You know, so being it social, that means you're supposed to make it social. That means what? You have to relate with other people. You have to talk with other people. You have to express yourself to other people. So that means you're gonna have to go through that phase where you feel awkward in the beginning because you really don't know how to do that, which is a natural thing that you feel. But once you break this barrier, you will need to go through that phase where you get rid of paying attention to what the other people are going to say, or you stop thinking about other people's judgments, because people will judge you anyway. That's for a fact. You know, even if you're doing everything correctly, even if you're perfect, people will judge the way you dress, people will judge your makeup, people will judge the way you sound, people will judge whatever they want to judge, because their judgment is about them, it's not about you. You know, so if you're all the time focused on what people will think about you in English or what people will say about you, you're never going to be able to do stuff, you know. So that's one thing. So speaking English is about courage, and having courage has a lot to do with the way you feel about yourself in terms of confidence. So self-confidence and self-esteem have a lot to do. They play a very important role in this game. And there's a maybe a misconception about self-esteem and self-confidence because they are very similar, but yet they're kind of different. And one of these days I was giving a talk about these two topics and how they are similar but yet different. So what's the difference between self-esteem and self-confidence, and why are they important why are they important when we're talking about learning and the learning process? Well, as I said, English is about being social. Being social is about exposure. It's about having courage. Courage to speak up even if you don't know all the words, or even if you don't know how to sound the words like a native or a pro, or even if you make mistakes, certain mistakes about, grammar. It doesn't matter. So being at an ability that needs for you to expose yourself, you're going to have to work on these two items very, very profoundly. You have to understand that this is part of the construct that's going to give you courage to not care about what people say, or not care about the critics, or not care about even your inner critic, because sometimes the most cruel critic to you is yourself. You're being too demanding, you're being too, I have to be perfect, I have to not make mistakes, I have to sound like a native speaker. If I don't, it's because I'm stupid. No, you have to fight that all the time. Well, self-confidence and self-esteem play a very important role in this subject. Being self-esteem, not just the way you feel about yourself, if you look great, or if your hair looks good today, or if you go, to a clinic to get Botox and your Botox is, up to date. It's not about that. Of course, it is about that too. Taking care of your appearance, the way you dress, the way, you want people to see you makes a difference in that, but it's much more profound than that. There's this thing about self-esteem that has a lot to do on how much you think you're worth. It has to do about how many good things you are worth. This is the point about self-esteem. It's the value you give yourself. Am I worthy of good things? Am I worthy of being fluent? Am I worthy of getting that next level job, or getting that job interview, or nailing that opportunity? Am I worthy of that? This is the question you have to answer when it comes to self-esteem. Because what happens is when you have very, very low self-esteem, you don't think you're worthy of good things. And good things sometimes require that you learn something, or that you make an effort to take that next step, take that extra mile step that you have to do, because learning a language is something that's going to require that you make an effort. It's not possible to learn something just passively, like, oh, I'm transferring English into my mind by osmosis. That's not going to happen. It's not that kind of process. You have to do it actively. So taking care of your self-esteem is going to help you build up the structure for your courage. A person that is very courageous, you can observe people around you, or people who are famous, who got good things in their lives going on. It's because they're brave. It's because they don't care what people think. It's because they are so focused and determined that nothing is going to stop them. And this has to do with self-esteem. If your self-esteem is low, probably this is not going to happen. And there's another thing about people's judgment that you have to be aware of. People who have got there, they don't care if you started studying English now, because they have gone through that phase. They paid the price. They're not going to criticize you. Normally, who's going to criticize you is people who want to get where you want to get, and they feel they can't. So they have to put you down so they don't feel like shit. And the people who are, mediocre. People who are average, who are not trying to make an effort, who are not disciplined, who are not working their confidence, these people are going to criticize you. People who got there, who are successful, they know how much effort it took. They know how, they've already been on your shoes where you are right now, so they will never criticize you. They know what you have to go through. They know that it takes an effort, and they know that probably you're afraid of judgment, and you shouldn't be afraid of being judged, because being judged by mediocre or average people, not going to change your life, you know. And there's this other pillar that I feel is very, very important that you build for building fluency and being able to expose yourself in a second language and having the courage to do that, which is self-confidence. And self-confidence has a lot to do on how much you feel that you can count on yourself. So I have this metaphor I usually use with my students, which is, if I have a friend and I really want to go out for dinner, let's go out for dinner, grab a bite, and we make this appointment, we arrange something to do, let's say it's tomorrow. I go to the restaurant, she doesn't show up. I'm going to be kind of upset, but, you know, I still really want to see her, so I'm going to arrange it again, you know, reschedule, try to reschedule to next week. So, okay, so let's grab a bite to eat next week. It's okay, we can have coffee or something else, you know, whatever. So she doesn't show up again. She's flaky. And I hate flaky people. I hate people who say they're going to come over and they don't come. If you're not coming, just tell me you're not coming, you know, in advance. But anywho, what happens here is that probably the third time, I'm not going to call this person again. I'm not going to call this person again because she flaked on me like twice. And because of that, my brain's going to try to protect me from failure or, you know, feeling disappointed by this person. So I'm not going to call her again because I know subconsciously in a certain level that I cannot count on this person. I cannot count on her. And when we talk about self-confidence, it's a little bit like that. Self-confidence is built on you being able to count on yourself, which means that when you make promises to yourself and you don't fulfill those promises, that means subconsciously you're training your brain to, you know, I promise things that I never do. So if you promise yourself that you're not going to eat, you know, sugar for like 30 days, do not eat freaking sugar for 30 days. If you tell yourself that you're going to start going to the gym on Monday, you have to go to the gym on Monday, because it's not only about going to the gym or getting what you want. It's about proving to yourself that you can count on yourself because you're reliable, you're trustworthy. So whatever you say, your word is your word. It doesn't matter if it's for other people or to yourself. Because the thing is, the trick is with ourselves, we don't have someone telling us what we have to do. You don't have someone telling you, oh, have you already lost the 2 kilos you promised? Or have you been like 15 days, you know, going without sugar? There's no one's coming to say that to you. No one's going to come and tell you, oh, you see, you have to do that. So this kind of promises or commitments that we make to ourselves, we won't have someone telling us, disciplining us, or, you know, or demanding from us that we do so or we take action. We're not going to have that. And because we're not going to have that, it seems like we don't have a deadline. We don't have stimuli to get this going and to get these projects going. But now I'm telling you that what you have to do to be willing to count on yourself is to promise yourself things and do it. If you promise yourself, oh, you're going to be fluent this year, you have to work hard to do that. At least if you don't become fluent as you wanted, you have to have taken a lot of steps. You know, I'm not exactly speaking English the way I wanted to, but I've taken this step, I've taken this one, I'm able to watch some kind of movie now, or now I'm listening to English a lot of times. So you have to tell yourself that you're on the journey. But whenever you promise yourself that you're doing something and then you don't do, it's like that friend, that flaky friend. You know, I can't count on myself because I promise things and I will never be able to really achieve them. So for building your self-confidence, this is the kind of thing. So create challenges to yourself. I'm going to study English for, you know, the next 10 days nonstop. No Saturdays, no Sundays, no breaks. I'm going to do that. or I'm gonna start gym on Monday, and you really go and do and start your gym, or I'm gonna start a diet, or whatever it is that you create as a challenge to yourself. Make it simple so that you can fulfill it, so that you program your brain for success. You program your brain to tell you, see, I can count on myself, because whatever I say, I'm a very disciplined person. When I want something, I'm a go-getter. I just go and get it. I want that, and I know that I'm going to do it because I can count on myself. I'm trustworthy. I'm reliable. It's not just other people who can count on me. I can count on myself. So building these two very strong structures, self-esteem, self-confidence, you're going to have the courage that you need to expose yourself. You're going to have the courage to not care what people say or think or might judge about you. It's okay. You know why you're doing that. And there's no such a thing as trying to learn English and becoming fluent if you don't practice, if you don't make mistakes, if you don't make these errors, if you don't go through the silent period, if you don't go through that period where you're trying to sound things. So building this path, it's going to be much easier. But everything that I said here today starts with the fact that you have to program your mind through your linguistics, through your words, through your thoughts, that you can do it. You have to tell yourself, yes, I can do it if I make the effort, if I sit down to study and practice, if I know for sure that I'm going to make mistakes and accept those mistakes as part of this big process that is learning English, because this is also part of the journey. There is no other way. There's no way around that. So this is going to be a very important step that you take in learning a second language and learning English and becoming fluent for sure. One of the things that I could say that if I could give you a piece of advice on that, on language learning, is start paying attention to the things you say to yourself and to the things you say about yourself to other people. Because sometimes this is what happens. You're telling, oh, people I'm going to ask, oh, I know you're studying English, right? So how's it coming along? Are you fluent already? Oh, can you listen to that song and understand everything? And then maybe you'll tell this person, yes, I'm studying, but I'm not very good. I think, I have some sort of, some sort of block in my life. I cannot unblock this, or there's some sort of trauma. Some people come to me and they say, oh, you know what? I cannot speak English because when I was 10 years old, I had a teacher, and this teacher was very strict, and she was very, how can I say that? She was very strict to the class, she was always pushing us so much. She was pushy. That's the word I was looking for. She was very pushy on us and very demanding, and I hated her, and she made me go, in front of class, and everybody started laughing at me. Okay, but you were 10 years old, You're not 10 years old anymore. How long are you going to are you going to keep letting this person who traumatized you when you were 10 tell you what you're going to do or what you're not going to do? How long are you going to let this person decide for you if you're going to speak English or not? Because this is what you're doing. You are not a hostage of your past. Your past does not have to be equal to your present or your future. You have to sit down and have this conversation with yourself where you tell yourself, listen, I'm not 10 years old anymore, and that teacher is not here anymore, and I'm not going to be stuck in the past anymore. I'm going to go there and do what I have to do, and I'll learn because I can, because I learned other things that are difficult. You learn the profession, you learn how to be a mother, you learn how to cook, you learn how to walk, you learn how to sit, so many difficult things that you didn't know how to do once in your life. So that means, yes, of course, you're capable of learning. You just have to do what has to be done. And one of the things that has to be done is build your self-esteem, build your self-confidence, and please, if you say terrible things to yourself, if you're very critical with yourself, you got to change that. You got to change this now. Don't wait for, you are not a victim of your past. Don't make yourself a victim. Just be you know, that person who acts, and I'm going to say, okay, I'm not 10 years old anymore. I'm not going to let this trauma hold me back anymore, because you can learn, you know, and that's what you have to tell yourself to program your brain for possibility. That's what you have to do. Program your brain for possibility. Telling yourself you have great memory, telling yourself you can do it, telling yourself that you're rooting for yourself, you know, yay, I'm my biggest supporter. You have to be your biggest supporter, you know, you have to be the one who says, yes, you know, yesterday I couldn't order coffee in Starbucks and now I can. So this is a reason for you to celebrate. There's this other thing that I feel that students don't do a lot, is they don't celebrate their results. They don't celebrate their little steps, the little steps they take forward. You know, they are expecting for something very strong and very big and very phenomenal to happen so that they can congratulate themselves. That's not what I want. That's not what I want for you, because if you learn how to celebrate every step of the way, even if it's a minor thing, even if it's a small thing, you're going to be able to have a lot of motivation to continue. You have to have good motivation to continue, especially because learning English is a long journey. It's not something that you're going to do in 10 days or in 10 weeks. It's not something like that. You have to go through a whole process, and you might as well help yourself in the process, not harm yourself in the process. You know, you can learn. If you have to learn English, you can learn it smiling, or you can learn just punishing yourself. What do you think is going to give you better results and going to keep you on the journey? If you make the journey light, if you're not carrying on weight that you don't have to, it's going to be much easier, you know? Well, guys, I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode. I myself have. I love talking about this topic, especially self-esteem and self-confidence, and how much this will change your game. And remember to please subscribe. If you're on YouTube, don't forget to leave your thumbs up. If you're on Spotify, spread the word out. You just comment on this episode, and I'll be back next week with another episode. Thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.